Oh, hello and greetings, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and Avengers everywhere assemble. Welcome to another installment of the French Quarter, where I, your host, Robert French, bring you quick info and insight into comic books, movies, video games, and everything that encompasses that fanboy nerdom. Now, I started out by saying this was another installment of the French Quarter, when in fact it's actually only the second installment of the French Quarter. Now, I came to you guys months ago with a quick review of a comic book, The Symbiote Spider-Man, as sort of a test bed for my new series. And I had tons of ideas lined up. However, my wife and I bought a house. Well, she did most of the work on that. But we moved, took a vacation before we even really unpacked. When we got back from vacation, I ran over my foot with a lawnmower, broke a toe. Luckily, I still have all my toes. Had a surgery, grew a beard, and, well, here we are. Now, also, while I was recuperating, Disney launched their new streaming app, Disney Plus, which opened up this whole new avenue of childhood favorites, recent hits, and brand new originals for me to visit. Now, I was super excited about this. I woke up at 5:30 that morning because I didn't want to miss out on a single minute of Disney magic. Now, I know it didn't have the greatest launch day, and if any of you guys are out there like subscribers and want to share some of your stories, please, I'd love to hear them, so leave them down in the comment section below. Anyway, during one of my movie viewing days, I decided to go and rewatch Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, sort of make like a day of it. And upon watching Infinity War, I noticed something almost right away that I never quite noticed before. And it wasn't a big something, but the more I did think about this something, the more it blew my mind. So much so that I text a friend of mine who's also really big into like superhero movies and shows. And when I told him, it pretty much blew his mind. So he was like, you should do a YouTube video about this. And I was like, dude, you're right. So thank you, Andrew Palladino. Here we are. Now, before we get started, I do have to state,
spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Now, while today I won't be divulging any major spoilers, I will be discussing specific scenes from Infinity War and Endgame. So if you haven't seen those movies, please stop this video, go reevaluate your life, watch those two movies, come back to me, press play. All right, let's get started. Now, upon viewing Infinity War for like the umpteenth time, I noticed something about 12 minutes into the movie. It's just after the main title sequence. We find Pepper Potts and Tony Stark taking a stroll through Central Park just moments before all hell is on the verge of breaking loose. Now, at first this scene seems like nothing more but a casual introduction to the Tony Stark, Iron Man character before the overall plot gets underway, as well as reestablishing Tony's trademark enthusiasm and intensity, as well as Pepper's mild-mannered level-headedness, and how like the two of them are never quite on the same page. However, with the release of Endgame, we see there is a bit of relevance to this scene when we learn that Pepper and Tony do in fact have a daughter named Morgan after Pepper's uncle. Now, we can assume that Tony and Pepper conceived shortly after the events of Infinity War, or perhaps just before, learn they're having a child and decide to name her Morgan, just like in Tony's dream, probably at Tony's request. Now, in the dream, Tony refers to Morgan as a him, and in Endgame we see that they do in fact have a daughter, but it's still a very eerie connection to a dream that Tony stated over and over again felt so real. So are we to like assume Tony possesses some sort of intuition or is like a precog that can dream future events? not likely. Perhaps it's nothing more than just a strange coincidence. Or perhaps it's not. Perhaps it's something else entirely. Perhaps it's not a dream he's having at all, but something I like to think of as a sort of residual memory effect caused by multiple and alternate timelines, disruptions in time through time travel. Basically saying that Tony isn't necessarily having a dream, but in fact having a memory from future events that could happen. Now, if that's the case, that would be the first clue or a little bit of foreshadowing that we get that time travel will be necessary in order for the Avengers to set any of this right. But I think many scientists and physicists out there would argue that's not exactly how time travel works. But, I mean, what do we know really? We're dealing with quantum physics, the quantum realm, comic book time travel. Let's not forget that when Nebula goes back in time, her present and future self like overlap on one another, creating thoughts and memories that exist in both individuals. And Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, spent 5 years trapped in the quantum realm, but yet only 5 hours passed for him, which isn't even enough time to watch Infinity War and Endgame. So all we can really be certain of is that we're not really sure how any of this works. But let's take a look at what we do know. We do know that Tony and Pepper will in fact have a child named Morgan, just like in Tony's dream. And we know that Tony is having said dream at about the same time Thanos is getting his hands on the Space Stone. And we know this is important because this is the final action that will set forth all the final events of Infinity War into place, as well as the one moment that will set forth the inevitable need for time travel in order to save the day. Now, I think that's why Tony was having this dream or this residual memory at that exact moment, because it's not until that moment that time travel will be possible. Now, I can already smell a lot of you out there saying, that's a bit of a stretch. But you can't help, when you look at the events of Endgame a little bit closer, you can't help but argue Tony does seem to have a little bit of insight or intuition. These gut feelings and unexplainable bits of information that just seem to work out for the better of the entire universe. We have the dream with Morgan, but then there's also the cute little introduction to Morgan where we find her in the beginning of Endgame playing outside with the Iron Woman helmet. Now, Tony comes over and kind of fusses at her, saying he shouldn't be playing with that. It's something he's making for their mom, or her mom, for an anniversary gift coming up. And it seems like a really adorable, cool scene at first. But then shortly after the Avengers show up, the scene really doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. Steve and the others ask Tony for help in their little time heist idea, and Tony shuts them down. And am I wrong, but don't we get Tony's kind of given up the whole crime fighting gig? Like he's hung it up and now he's trying his hand at this normal life with Morgan and Pepper. Well, if that's the case, then why is he even building this Iron Woman suit to begin with? For an anniversary gift? I mean, is this to be some kind of weird kinky sex thing? And is this even an anniversary, like a wedding anniversary? Or is this an anniversary like the day Thanos won kind of an anniversary? At any rate, it doesn't seem to make any sense why he would be making this suit unless something in his gut is telling him that one day it will be needed. One day Pepper will need this. One day the world will need this. We can't do anything now to fix things, but maybe in a few years we will be able to. After all, it's going to take Scott Lang that long just to get out of the quantum realm. And speaking of the time heist, let's look at the part of the time heist that takes place in New York, 2012. Now, all seems lost. They've lost the Tesseract, and they're about to give up. When then suddenly Tony seems to know exactly when, the day, the time, the place, in the past that they'll need to go in order to not only acquire the Tesseract they need, but the Pym particles that they'll need in order to return. How? After arriving in said past 1970, we quickly learned that this is information that exists between Tony is even born. So again, how? And also, Tony obtains his information not only quickly, but very dramatically. He goes from being sort of sure to almost certain in just a matter of moments. It's like he not only quickly knows how, but how he knows how. And he never says anything to Steve other than, "Do you trust me?" And of course, it all seems to work out. Now, I believe again that this is some sort of residual memory effect taking place. That Tony knows exactly when and where to go because he's having a memory of a future where he'll know when and where to go. Perhaps this is even information that Steve told Tony instead of returning once he returned the time stones. But at any rate, Tony is once again correct. Now, finally, I want to look at the scene where Tony leaves the video for his friends and family at the end of Endgame. Now, this could be to serve as simply like a cover my bases, worst case scenario, fail-safe type of a situation. But again, I feel that something in Tony's gut is telling him that leaving this video is the right thing to do. That there's going to be a lot of crying eyes, a lot of broken hearts, and I don't think he wants anyone to be sad. It's almost as if Tony knew what was going to happen before they even really set out. And he knew that they had one shot and that things would have to take place this way in order for the rest of the universe to be safe. After all, Doctor Strange told Tony that there was only one timeline in which the Avengers would win. And I think part of Tony never forgot this. Maybe part of Doctor Strange never really left the Avengers. Perhaps in some strange way, somehow, Doctor Strange was helping them out all along. Maybe that's how Tony had the inside track. Perhaps Doctor Strange would eventually show him the future events of a future that could take place. And Tony was having memories of these future events. We know that the only reason Doctor Strange even handed over the time stone to Thanos to begin with is because he knew it was the only way that the Avengers would eventually win. In fact, if you look closely at the conclusion of the battle between the Avengers and Thanos at the end of Endgame, there's a scene where Doctor Strange just holds up that single index finger to Iron Man, almost as if to signify that this is it. This is our one moment, our one shot, our 1 in 14,605. That everything we've done, everything we've been through is for this very moment. Like, don't forget Doctor Strange's parting words either from Infinity War. There was no other way. And I think somewhere along the line, Tony Stark realized all of this and more. Well, anyway, that's all I have for you. There's my residual memories from alternate timelines and unnatural disruptions in time from time travel theory. I hope you guys have really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear your comments and feedback, so please leave those for me, as well as any of your own theories. I would love to hear some of your own theories as well. As always, don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter at RFA the Third. That's RFA the Third, 3RD. And remember, until next time, guys, don't spend your quarter anywhere else. Thank you so much. Robert French, signing out. Thanks, guys.